Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and today Throwback Week rolls on with a review of the Change of Course second album The Bends by Radiohead. If you've been following my journey with this UK-based band at all, then you know I went from not being able to get into them to falling head over heels in love with their music. I have reviews up for several of their other records, so if you're curious after you watch this review today, then go check those out. And if you enjoyed this video, of course, then drop a like on it. Radiohead are a force of nature. Every time I think I've started to pigeonhole them, I uncover new layers that simply hadn't appeared to me before. The Bends is another prime example of that, and I so vividly remember the night that this album fully clicked for me. After many publications wrote off the lads as another group of schmucks throwing their hat in the booming grunge scene of the early 90s, Radiohead turned to producer John Leckie and engineer Nigel Godrich for an album that not only transcended grunge, but an overall decision that proved to be one of the single greatest ever made in music. That decision, of course, landed them not only Nigel, who went on to produce or else co-produce each subsequent Radiohead album that we now have decades later, but also the sonic exploration handed down on the Bends, which bridged the gap between rock, grunge, and Britpop. You really can't underestimate the lasting impact or even the influence that Radiohead's sophomore album had on 1995 and a generation of new bands. Some of my favorite groups use the Bends as a jumping off point for their creativity. It's so clear to me at this point. Loads of sounds from, say, Nice Dream or Fake Plastic Trees made their way over to help define Coldplay's debut album Parachutes. Muse took inspiration from noisy rock cuts like Just to help establish their own unique sound, and of course Tom York's falsetto has been compared to Matt Bellamy's a million times over, so I'm not here to break down pointless comparisons. I just happen to think it's kinda lovely that so many groups found this and OK Computer to be such inspirational albums in the UK music scene. Starting a listen of this record feels a bit like dusting off a book of short stories you're always eager to fall back into. They aren't necessarily intertwined in terms of their narrative, but it makes sense for everything to be here, in its right place. Whereas Pablo Honey mostly lined up all three guitarists in the band to play the same or else similar parts, they shifted into something much more appealing with memorable leads, textured rhythms, and even some more technical or aggressive parts to drive home the harder alternative rock sound that's found on much of the album. York was overflowing with creativity during the sessions for the Bends, and you can bet your fake plastic tree it's felt all over this magnetizing release. Radiohead have described the creative process for album 2 as much more collaborative in nature. Everyone is clearly gelling very well here, with kinetic energy radiating from this batch of songs in a major, undeniable way. For as concise a record as this may be, it's also quite densely layered, with York taking more mature strides lyrically while remaining emotionally resonant, and the rest of the band dialing up their playing style without sacrificing any of their natural chemistry. Really, it doesn't even feel like a 48-minute listen when you're in the zone, and since the guys were clearly in the zone when they crafted it, you know, it just makes sense. It's certainly depressing and tortured in many ways given the lyrics, but I find the Bends to be oddly uplifting at the same time. In the vast sea of Radiohead's discography, the Bends might only feel like a little tiny drop in the ocean when compared to some of their more experimental or important work. But I encourage you to be patient. Its important place gets clearer the more you listen. At least, that's what I can say from my own personal journey. I say journey intentionally because, to bring back my book comparison, it feels like a page turner that you just can't put down. In fact, sometimes you realistically can't because the transitions are too seamless. For example, Bulletproof, I Wish I Was, and to Black Star, those two are sewn together in such a perfect way that you have to listen to them back to back. For anyone who might be looking to get more into Radiohead but has no idea where to start, I honestly think that this would be an ideal starter pack of an album for you, especially if you're more into rock. This is a more mass-appealing album, I suppose, at first glance, so it'll hook you with its sound, but make sure to stay for those insightful lyrics, beautiful vocals, and an incredible sense of musicianship. I'm a massive fan of those buzzing guitar tones utilized and the bass from Colin Greenwood too. There's an underrated star of the show if I've ever heard one. Phil Selwell's drumming isn't necessarily overpowering, but I'd say he evolved his style tenfold from the debut. He's great at holding it down and setting the tempo with some of the slower cuts like High and Dry, and the ever-morphing musical atmosphere just always seems to come naturally to every member of the band, as they whip out the exact magic we've come to expect from Radiohead on every track. My Iron Lung, certified mad lad tune right here, friends. They bring an ultimatum to themselves as a band. Are you gonna let yourself get trapped in a box after Creep smashed them through to the mainstream, or will you allow yourself to experiment? I think we all know which box they ended up checking, as they're one of the most revolutionary bands of all time, but it's really fun to go back in time to see them wrestling with success on the massive sounding songs like My Iron Lung. Gotta love that wicked guitar tone that thrashes around like a fish on a boat while York squirms in the background like a madman too. It's just the perfect touch to send this one over the moon. Nice Dream is one of my absolute favorite Radiohead songs. Its sense of serenity is really comforting, even if the warm embrace might just all be a dream. Loads of acoustic guitar and some really remarkable backing vocals in the second half of this song make this one to remember, especially with those wild, twisting guitars that shake our world before the track fades back away to the dream world. Fading us into the beautiful twisted world of the Bends is Planet Telex, a splendid cut with traces of grungy, almost desert rock guitars and a riveting vocal performance from York, which he apparently recorded while totally wasted in the studio. There's something so grabby about the way he ties together words and phrases on this one, made even better by an exceptional looming bass, plus the evolving sense of dread the guitars are able to push. Just as one of the hardest hitting rockers the lads ever assembled, and I am here for this sound. The noisy barrage of guitars that open up the tune are fantastic, and the chorus remains one of the best that they've ever created. Now granted, part of that could have something to do with the fact that the band tried to cram as many chords as possible into Just, but it also stands out for those angry lyrics that sees York taking direct aim at a narcissistic friend. The guitars at the end are fucking unreal. Songs like this, they just make me feel alive. What a beautiful stepping stone trailblazer Radiohead put together with Fake Plastic Trees. This was a huge sign of growth for the band, with hints of angst and their former sound, but also a willingness to move forward with passionate ideas. Tom's voice is soothing, but perhaps a little misleading at first glance. This song is a takedown on consumerism, capitalism. Come on, wake up, sheeple! The Bends lands a killer move as the title track, and I really appreciate what it brings to the table. Phil Selway is a giant behind the drum kit here, pushing the sonic narrative forward with some really compelling percussion. Big ups to not only Phil, but the rest of Radiohead too. They fully dominate this tune on so many different levels. Street Spirit Fade Out winds down the Bends as our final track, but it's anything but a yawn-worthy closing note. You could say this whole album was a depressing journey, but if that's true, then this is the culmination of all those feelings into one swan song to fade us out. Pun definitely intended. I'm so sorry. To understand Radiohead and their more progressive experiments that came in subsequent years, you have to trace back the roots to see where it all started. This is the album that branched them out, separated them from their peers, and put them in a league of their own. Their sophomore record, The Bends, is getting a glowing 5 out of 5 perfect score and a heavy-handed recommendation from me. I do hope that you guys will check out this record, especially if you've never heard it before. It's so fun, but yet depressing, but uplifting to listen to. It's really hard to describe, so there's a link to stream it in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching another Throwback review right here during Throwback Week. If you enjoyed it, then do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe if you happen to be new, because more Radiohead reviews will be happening. Other than that, you can check out more of those right here or tap here for another recent Throwback review. Connect with me on social media at these links down below, and I'll see you soon for more right here on ARTV.